Ancient Egyptian, ancient technologies. um, lifting, lifting stones, lifting heavy objects in general, which requires you to understand gravity, right? Because when it comes to pushing or pulling something, there's less gravity involved in that. Right? There's less gravity being put onto an object that's moving. That's being pushed or pulled, as opposed to being lifted. That's why it's easier to move around a rocket, than it is to lift it off into space. So we do have methods to be able to lift large, heavy objects. That's through the power of leverage. So using counterbalance, using weight to lift something else, because remember we're trying to apply a force. And we can use pulley systems, which can multiply mechanical advantage, right? They can multiply that force, which is always good to increase something, right? Multiply the power of something so that we can get the most out of it. As you can see over here, ancient Egyptians had the idea of, scales, right? Leverage, right? So them having cranes or anything of that nature wouldn't be too surprising. And largely it would have been made of wood and whatnot, and rope and some stone, right? Especially for the counterweights. So they understood the idea of leverage and weights. And they knew math and whatnot, so we gotta give them that. So with that knowledge, they obviously are going to use it, apply it to be able to pick up stone, which is basically the methods they'll use will be similar to, how our arms work, right? How we're able to grab things and lift things, and the way our arms operate. There's joints, right, that connect at certain points, and then there's muscle tendons, right, ligaments that act as pulleys, that act as ropes, right? And our elbows act as essentially pulleys. So here are some depictions of some cranes, right? Simple leverage-based cranes or leverage cranes, whatever you want to call them. Some of these have pivot capabilities, like this one down here with the old man and the kid. It has the ability to pivot, so that way they can move the rock not only up, but over and around and get it from one location to another one, which is the most common method I like for just picking up and moving around stone, especially if you want to place them and stack them. This would be a common method for doing so. But when it comes to like lifting to to a higher degree, because you don't need to lift the stone all the way off the ground. You just need to lift it a couple inches off the ground, like 1 or 2 inches. That way it's not touching the ground. So that way you can move it, right? And it won't create friction with it rubbing against the ground, right? You just need to lift it off the ground just high enough so you can start moving it. Same thing as if you were trying to lift up a rock by hand. You don't need to lift it over your head in order to move it. You just need to lift it a little bit off the ground, like at least 1 inch or 2, and then start carrying. I've done that a couple times in my younger years, where I would pick up a rock or something big and heavy, just a couple inches off the ground, and then just walk hunched over. Obviously not good for the back, but you get the point. It was just the fact that it was a method that worked. It would guarantee that I can move and take from point A to point B something really, really heavy, just by myself. Not good for my back, of course, but it's a method. Obviously, you rather replace yourself with a mechanical device. You rather use wood and let the wood break than you break. So using, wood, lots of it, rope, things of that nature can help you easily build stuff. Over here you see there's a construction of, this is a trebuchet as they call it. It's basically a catapult. It uses the same concept as a scale or a leverage crane. And I'm just using this as an illustration of like, hey, you can make something like this with out of wood, counterweight on one end and whatnot, and put the rocks that you want on the other end with some type of rope system to help you control the up and down motion of the crane. And then you can have wheels so you can move it around wherever you want, or you can lift something and then move the whole entire crane to carry, right, and transport the block wherever you want, and then lift it higher, drop it down, whatever you want, like a crane. And of course you can use like animals and whatnot or other humans to help you pull. You can of course obviously use stuff like water wheels, system. You can use a flywheel system, hand crank flywheel system, or a steam engine, which will pretty much be like a flywheel, like a water wheel, but you're using steam to turn the water wheel, and the water wheel turns the gears, which will turn flywheels, and the flywheels will create momentum, and the momentum you can transfer it to wheels, and the wheels will move, and you get the idea. Flywheel technology. So these up here are basically what they call them dumb waiters, or basically you could say elevators. So like they could do like an elevator type system where you have a platform that could be lifted up, obviously with counterweights or some type of so like that, you can use like a winch. I think that's what they call a winch. So you can wind it up. Damn it. Right. So that way you can wind it up and lift something. So that's a basic crane or basic elevator type system. Over here, it's with the dumb waiters concept. It's you can pull yourself up. It has a whole mechanism with the counterweights and all that stuff. Mechanism that allows you to go up and down based off of which one of these ropes you pull. So you pull the left, you go up, you pull the right, you go down, you get the idea. So essentially a hand cranked elevator. Over here we have this is like a ski lift, but I'm using it as a way to illustrate the idea that you could in the desert, right, in sand, set up these little crane lifts, whatever you want to call it, and then have like a whole bunch of lines going from one to the other one, and then transport blocks through that. So that way these act like a fireman line or whatever they call it, where you give each other a bucket of water to get to a bucket to a certain location. So it's a way to send a block from here to the next guy, and the next guy sends it to the next guy, and the next, all through this system to get it to wherever you want. And then if you stack this up the side of a pyramid, then this will be a way you can just transport upwards at an angle blocks to the top of the pyramid to where you need it. And it makes it adjustable because all you have to do is add another one to the top of this, to the top of this chain, and go from the bottom to the top to the bottom. And this is a way to prevent having to have humans go up the pyramid to put blocks up there and then come back down, grab another block and take it back up, right, through some type of ramp or something similar to that. You can do something like this, where you're passing off the stone to from one crane essentially to another crane to another crane to another crane all the way up. So, and here's just showing it made something made of wood, the thing made of the ski lift made of wood. As you can see over here, there's some math and some concepts of how to lift essentially 100 pounds with very little force, about 25 pounds of force. You can lift 100 pounds if you have 4 pulleys. So it's just the math to multiply. So you can use a whole bunch of pulleys, right, a whole bunch of circles and rope. You use a little bit of manpower, and boom, you can lift something really, really heavy. So once you understand that, lifting 100 tons, 200 tons, a million tons, billion tons wouldn't be that big of a deal. It just requires a lot of pulleys and a lot of rope. And then as you can see here, they have steps right on the side of the pyramid. And they got this ramp right here on the steps. Basically, it's just a whole bunch of sand on the steps, and then they just slowly pull up the blocks that's on a sled using this similar method and get it up to the top and use it and do what you need to do and keep that process going over and over again. So it's a way of transporting it without having to lift, just slide it up there. Now they could have used different methods. I don't believe they used just one method, like UFOs. You just lift the blocks and drop them, lift them, drop them. But they had different methods. I mean, I do believe that there was a possibility of being able to use something they had the ability to fly, but that's for a different video. But you don't really need something to fly or a giant human being to pick up the blocks and stack it on top for you. You can use cranes, right? So here's okay, that one disappeared. Here's the depiction. Here's some Stonehenge. You see how they're tilting it, doing some leverage, using some rope too. There's a counterweight down here. It's on the block, and then they're pulling it from one side so that way it tilts over and falls into place on its own. And you will see a video of something similar to that at the end of this video that I recorded. And here's Stonehenge, and I had an idea of how you can lift these without even having to lift these blocks and putting on top. There's a way to have them already attached to the two bottom parts and then lift them up. So I had an idea where you can lift all three of these blocks at the same time. You'll see it in the video at the end of this. And over here you see this is unnecessary, but it's a possibility, right? A big, long, tall crane like seesaw type structure. You have a whole bunch of people over here with counterweights lifting up the block high enough that these guys over here can pull it over and onto the top of the platform, the pyramid, and build the pyramid that way. And then over here is just somebody made something, a structure, where as you can see you could create a crane that is oddly shaped but will work because it's about angles and stuff. So just throwing that in there just to show different ways you could move things. It's not a, that's the thing, it's not like there's just one way of moving things, because the concept is the same, right? You're trying to resist gravity. You're trying to move something from one location to another, from one height to another. It's just a matter of the materials you have and how you utilize them to get the results you want. It would be simpler to just have a giant human being build the pyramids, but if you don't got it, then you gotta do the best you can with what you got. And that's the end of the video. So, as you can see, we have 20-pound weight, and we got an extra 5 pounds on one side. So essentially, it's 15 pounds on this side and 10 on this side. Obviously, the idea is to make one side heavier than the other side for the counterbalance, right? Because if one side is heavier than the other side, when you lift it up in the middle, obviously it's going to be unbalanced, so it's going to tilt over to one side. And this is for the purpose of lifting, or, well, I'll just show you. Obviously, the idea is to get something upright, right? So I'm just using that as a measuring to see how far up I go before it actually has to go over. So I use more fingers to lift. I'm trying to lift mainly straight up, right? Instead of like lifting and pushing over, right? Instead of lifting up and pushing over, I'm trying to lift it just straight up movement, and then let that counterweight finish flipping it over. And as you can see, it flipped over and didn't go all the way over. So it didn't, fall over. It stopped because this not only acts as a counterweight, a way to lift this up and put it straight, it's also to prevent it from tilting over. Right? So that's the other thing. So this is a way to set up a obelisk or anything of that nature, or just a big, large, heavy stone slab. Ideally, that's not cylinder shape, but more of a a flat shaped surface, like like an obelisk, like a big long block. So this is how you can set up a whole bunch of stones. Now this was just a thought for making Stonehenge. So if I was to make Stonehenge all by myself, this would be a way of doing it. Now the idea was it's not too difficult to think how to lift a pillar straight up and down and to set up pillars. The next step, right, is to put something on top. To put a stone on top is like, well, whatever technology, whatever method you use to put the stone on top, right, to lift and put on top, could just be used, just as easily be used to lift, to put, just to put this straight up, right, to stand it horizontally. So then it's like, I was like, but if you don't have something that's strong enough to lift something really heavy, like something that's 20 tons and stack it on top of something, right? If you don't have that, how can you do it, right? How can you put something that's 20 tons vertically, right, and then put something 20 tons horizontally above it, right? Because you got to lift it all the way up and then put it on top. So a way to put something on top of like two pillars, right, would be while this is lying down, right, while it's lying down, you have one pillar, right, then you have another pillar right next to it, right, and what you want to do is from here, well, from top here to the other top of where you want the weight to be, right, the slab to be on top, you're going to place it against it, right? You're going to make the shape of what you want, which is two pillars and then something on top, right? And then attach it, tie it together, fasten them together, and you have like a, like a U shape. Then you want to put weight on top of the top part, weight, stone basically, weight from here over there. Give me a second. All right, quickly sketch the diagram. So you see the idea of, you got one pillar, another pillar, you got the pillar on the top, so this will create that Stonehenge type of shape, right? You want to connect, like I said, through rope or some method to connect the two corners to the top, and then you want to put the counterweight, which will look something similar to this, where you want to attach some type of weight to the legs, let's call them legs. So you want to attach some weights to the legs, so that way when you start lifting it up, ideally through the center, which will be here, this you want to lift up here, you want to lift up here, which will cause it to kind of go up and then tilt and then boom and then stand up, right? So you want to lift it up and then boom, which is similar to the lifting this thing up, right? And then it will tilt over and align itself. Because the idea is you kind of want to get it here. You want to get it here on its edge, like a V shape, right? So it's kind of like a seesaw, and then when you push it over, boom, this gravity will push it down, which will cause this to fall forward in its place.